From Singapore to Australia to even Jamaica, there's a secret ethnic Han Chinese subgroup that consistently rises to the highest echelons of society wherever they go. Not to be confused with the Maori Hakka, the Hakka people, literally translated as guest family, were perpetual outsiders in China, forced to survive in hostile environments in the south after migrating from the north. Forged through hardship, the Hakka diaspora spread across the world, often becoming notable figures in politics, business, and culture. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's founding father and himself Hakka, noted the exceptionalism of this subgroup, once stating, "The Hakkas consider themselves very special. They are tough, resourceful. You have more Hakkas in the cabinet than are represented in the population." This overrepresentation isn't unique to Singapore. It's a pattern that defines modern Chinese history. Mainland China has been littered with notable Hakka revolutionaries and political giants. Despite being a minority, they have produced a disproportionate number of generals and scholars, most notably Sun Yat-sen, the first president of the Republic of China, and Deng Xiaoping, the architect of China's economic opening, whose likely Hakka roots further cement the group's extraordinary political legacy. But mainland China is only the beginning. To truly see the Hakka's global reach, we have to follow the diaspora who left home and ended up dominating the world. Let's start with this channel's favorite person.
We are descendants of landless peasants. My great-grandfather came from Tapu because it was no future there. He made a small fortune, he went back. His wife did not want to go back with him, so that's why I'm here. My relatives in Tapu has given me my family tree. Ordinary people. 6 generations up, there was a military secretary in Guangxi. That's the only illustrious person.
Lee Kuan Yew, whose roots trace back to Dabu, Guangdong, often looked to his Hakka heritage. He viewed the Hakka story as a masterclass in survival, tracing his lineage back to a people defined by their displacement. He stated, "My family history in Singapore began with my paternal great-grandfather, Lee Bok Boon, a Hakka. The Hakkas are Han Chinese from the northern and central plains of China, who migrated to Fujian, Guangdong, and other provinces in the south some 700 to 1,000 years ago. As latecomers, they were only able to squeeze themselves into the less fertile and more hilly areas unoccupied by the local inhabitants. Forced into the harsh mountains with scarce resources, the Hakka had to adapt as perennial outsiders. They faced sustained, violent hostility from surrounding communities, including the Cantonese, that they engineered a radical form of survival, the Tulo. These were enormous circular fortress houses built from rammed earth. They lived in a literal circle, facing inward, watching each other's backs. Lee saw this hardship as the source of their enduring strength, stating, "They are tough, resourceful. They were the only Chinese group that did not bind their women's feet, because they lived on hilly terrain and couldn't afford to have women with feet bound. They are supposed to be harder working, tougher, and therefore higher achievers." You see, in the Hakka world, life was stripped down to the essentials where everyone contributed. In fact, this close-knit bond that has endured generations fueled Lee's first election in 1959, where his most fervent supporters were the Hakka clan associations. He stated, "Total strangers came to offer their services. They were Dapu Hakkas, and they expected nothing in return except to share in my glory." Lee himself was perhaps the ultimate embodiment of the Hakka spirit. Surviving British colonisation, the brutal Japanese occupation, the heartbreaking collapse of the Malayan merger, and 5 decades leading a tiny city-state surrounded by giants. He traced his resilience directly back to his bloodline, stating, "Fortunately for me, I have a very high threshold for pain. I am a Hakka. Hakka can take a lot of pain, so I survived." Though Lee never visited his ancestral village due to political reasons, the home his great-grandfather built still stands in China today as a landmark. His Hakka grit lived on in his children, defining his eldest son's time as Prime Minister, but perhaps best captured by his daughter during her father's eulogy. She said, "I nearly broke down, but I won't break down. I am a Hakka woman, so farewell, Papa." But the Lee family's resolve is part of a much larger story. Just across the border in Malaysia, the Hakka were the backbone of early industry, literally carving a nation out of tin mines and dense jungle. Their influence was cemented by Yapah Loy, the man recognized as the architect of modern Kuala Lumpur. Throughout the late 1800s, he transformed a lawless outpost into the nation's future capital, rebuilding the city ground up 3 separate times following civil war, fire, and catastrophic floods. Then there is Jimmy Choo, a cobbler's son from Penang. He crafted his first pair of shoes at age 11 before heading to London with nothing. He scrubbed floors to pay for design school, but that grit eventually took him from a kitchen sink to the pages of Vogue. He became the shoemaker for Princess Diana, turning a family trade into a global empire. In Thailand, the Hakka forged a political dynasty, the Shinawatras. Hailing from the same heartland as Lee Kuan Yew, these descendants of 19th century silk merchants have produced 4 prime ministers. The patriarch, Thaksin, built a telecom empire before launching a political dynasty that survived decades of coups and exile, even finding time to buy Manchester City along the way. In Indonesia, the Hakka spirit met its test in Basuki Ahok Purnama. In 2014, he became Jakarta's first ethnic Chinese governor, a historic breakthrough for a nation scarred by discrimination. In Myanmar, the Hakka legacy is a study in extremes. For decades, the nation was dominated by the military strongman, Ing-Wen. To cement his power, he hid his Chinese identity, ironically banning Chinese schools, nationalizing their businesses, and stripping his own community of their rights to prove he was the ultimate Burmese patriot. But Myanmar also birthed a global icon, Tiger Balm. Its founder, Boon Hor, was the son of a Hakka herbalist who arrived in Rangoon with nothing. From a tiny medicine shop in a colonial back street, he took a family recipe and built a pharmaceutical empire. By age 38, he was the wealthiest man in the city. Then, using Singapore as a springboard, he and his brother conquered markets from Hong Kong to the west, turning a street-side formula into one of the most recognizable brands on earth. In Hong Kong, its cinematic golden age was forged by the Hakka. Chow Yun-fat grew up in a house without electricity, helping his mother sell Hakka tea pudding on the streets of Lam Ma Island. From those humble roots, he rose to become a global icon. Lee Cheung, the defining star of his generation, and voted the most beloved actor in a century of Chinese cinema, was the son of a Hakka tailor. And behind the camera, Raymond Chow was the founder of Golden Harvest, who launched the global careers of Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. In Taiwan, the story of power is fundamentally a Hakka story. Lee Teng-hui, the historic figure who served as the first popularly elected president in Chinese history, was Hakka. Tsai Ing-Wen, the nation's first female leader, also traces her roots to the Hakka heartland, proving once again that the Hakka punch far above their weight in political spheres. In Japan, we have Kimiko Yo, a 3-time Japan Academy Prize winner and icon of Japanese cinema. The foundation was laid by her father, who moved from Taiwan to Japan and founded the Japan Hakka Association. In South Africa, the Hakka pattern is personified by Patrick Soon-Shiong. Born under apartheid to parents from Malaysian, he was forced to work for half the salary of his white colleagues despite being a top-ranked medical student. He did what Hakka people do. He left. Settling in North America, he invented the blockbuster cancer drug Abraxane and built a medical empire, eventually becoming one of the wealthiest doctors in the world and owner of the Los Angeles Times. In Australia, the Hakka legacy reaches the highest levels of power through Foreign Minister Penny Wong. In 2008, she made history as the first Asian Australian to serve in the federal cabinet, but her resolve was forged long before she entered parliament. It was anchored in the survival of her grandmother, a woman who single-handedly kept the family alive during the brutal Japanese occupation of Borneo. Wong frequently cites her grandmother's determination, humility, and resilience as a source of strength in her own life and career. In the UK, we have Baron Way. In 2010, he became the youngest member of the House of Lords and the first British-born person of Chinese descent to enter the upper house of Parliament. In America, we have Xing Yao. Born in the Hakka heartland of Guangdong, he became a Harvard professor and the first person of Chinese descent to win the Fields Medal, the Nobel Prize of Mathematics. In the world of hip-hop, MC Jin, the first Chinese-American rapper to sign with a major US label and a legendary battle rap champion, is also Hakka. In Canada, the Hakka story reached the pinnacle of power through Adrienne Poy. In 1942, she arrived as a penniless refugee fleeing the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong. Decades later, she rose to become the Governor-General, the formal representative of the British Crown. In Mauritius, the Hakka story is etched into the national currency. Sir Jean-Etienne Moylan Achuen, the son of a Hakka migrant, was a founding father of the modern state, a key architect of the independence movement, and the island's first Chinese cabinet minister, he was later knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. Across the Caribbean and South America, Hakkas also made an impact. In the 19th century, thousands arrived from Guangdong as indentured workers. Within generations, their descendants were running the countries. Arthur Cheung, who served as the first president of Guyana from 1970 to 1980, was the first ethnic Chinese head of state in a non-Asian nation. You also have Henk Chin Sen, who served as Prime Minister and later President of Suriname in the early 1980s. Solomon Hochoy was the first Governor-General of Trinidad and Tobago after its independence in 1962. A son of Hakka migrants, he was the first person of Chinese descent to serve as a head of state in the Western world, representing the British Crown in a newly sovereign nation. Then there are the icons of global pop culture. Naomi Campbell, one of the most recognizable faces on earth, carries her Chinese Jamaican heritage through her paternal grandmother, Ming. While she has never specified her Hakka roots directly, the history is clear. The Chinese migrants who originally moved to Jamaica were almost entirely Hakka. The same likely applies to global sensation Sean Paul. Known in his early days as Chinese Boy, his family roots trace back to the same wave of migrants who transformed the Jamaican music industry. You see, before the world knew reggae music, Hakka entrepreneurs were providing the infrastructure. Leslie Kong gave Bob Marley his first recording session in 1962 and launched reggae legend Jimmy Cliff. Meanwhile, Vincent and Patricia Chin founded VP Records, which grew into the largest independent reggae label on the planet. Across the Pacific, the pattern of Hakka political leadership held firm. In French Polynesia, Gaston Tong Sang served as president 3 separate times between 2006 and 2011. So, there we have it. From the halls of power in Singapore to the recording studios of Kingston, a clear pattern emerges. For 1,000 years, the Hakka were defined by their displacement, a people forever on the move, searching for a place to belong. But from that adversity, they forged a grit that changed history. They began as guests and outsiders, but they ended up as the ones running the world.